de Oxford. Después de un breve periodo como reportero en el New York Times, se convirtió en becario de la Society of Fellows de Harvard. Fue profesor en Princeton desde 1968 hasta 2007, cuando se convirtió en Carl Forsyther, no sé si está bien pronunciado, University Professor, y director de la Biblioteca de la Universidad de Harvard. Ha sido profesor visitante e invitado en muchas universidades e institutos de educación, además de ser miembro del Consejo de la Biblioteca Pública de Nueva York y de prensa de la Universidad de Oxford. Fue presidente de la American Historical Association y de la Sociedad Internacional de Estudios del Siglo XVIII. Entre sus premios se pueden mencionar el MacArthur Fellowship, el National Book Critics Cycle Award, recibió la Legión de Honor, la medalla de la Legión de Honor francesa, la medalla Nacional de Humanidades otorgada por el presidente Obama en febrero de 2014 y el Premio Mundial del Duca en Humanidades otorgado por el Instituto de Francia en 2013. Ha escrito y editado numerosos libros, entre ellos El negocio de la ilustración, La gran masacre de gatos, Berlin Diaries, los bestsellers prohibidos en Francia antes de la Revolución. Sus libros más recientes, los estoy pronunciando ya en castellano porque están ya disponibles en nuestro idioma, son El diablo en el agua bendita o El arte de la calumnia de Luis XIV a Napoleón y Censors trabajando, de cómo los estados dieron forma a la literatura. Sin más preámbulo, los dejo con el profesor.
Señoras y señores, estoy muy agradecido por el honor de este coloquio. Siento solo que no puedo agradecer suficientemente Tomás Granado Salinas. Tomás, muchas gracias Tomás, y todo el mundo en el Fondo de Cultura Económica, porque no hablo bastante español. Así que, perdón, necesito seguir en inglés. So that is my primitive attempt to speak Spanish with you. I have been studying Spanish for 5 months. At my age, to learn a new language may be crazy, but I love Spanish. I love, especially Mexico. You have a wonderful center here, and the university, the libraries. It's magnificent to be here. So thank you for inviting me. Now, I would like to plunge right into my subject. Maybe be 40 or 50 minutes, and then perhaps time for questions. Am I speaking clearly enough? Yes. I will try to go slowly, and put your hand up if I don't make myself clear. What I want to do, briefly, is to attempt to bring the understanding of censorship to a new level. Now that's very ambitious. I may not succeed, but I will begin with an observation, and that is namely that the history of censorship has a problem because it looks so simple. It pits oppression against freedom of expression. But if you look harder, it appears more complicated, of course. And it's full of surprises. So I'm constantly finding aspects of censorship which surprise me and make me think that our understanding is not deep enough. So I think that by studying censorship under 3 authoritarian regimes, we could rethink our understanding of censorship in general. Now, you might think I should begin with a definition. my students often, when they write papers, define something by looking it up in a dictionary. And I don't much like definitions, I have to admit, because they raise the danger of what the French call une question mal posée, the problem of not putting the right question. If the question is, how do you define censorship, there is a danger that you could reify it, that you could treat it as if it's a thing in itself, what the Germans call a Ding an sich. That is to say, censorship could be understood as something like a radioactive substance that goes through the bloodstream and the doctors can follow through the body. It's not like that at all. So what I am in favor of is conceptual clarity, but not a definition that will reify something I find to be problematic. So instead of saying, what is censorship, I would like to ask a different question, one which comes from Irving Goffman. Is the sociology of Irving Goffman pretty well known here? Well, he was a very disruptive sociologist. And he said, at the beginning of any inquiry, the question to ask is, what is going on here? That's the question I would like to pursue. So the idea is to get inside the workings of scholarship, to consult the censors themselves, to try to understand how they understood their jobs, to look at patterns of behavior from the native's point of view, as anthropologists put it. So this is ethnographic history and it's comparative history at the same time. To do this, you need a rich run of documents, lots of documents, not just dozens, but hundreds and hundreds, so you can get deep into the actual working of censorship as a system. What I want to do is to discuss three cases, in which are Bourbon France in the 18th century, British India in the 19th century, and communist East Germany in the 20th century. So three very different systems in three different centuries and three different cultures. Let's begin with France. What you see is the title page of a typical legal French book. Now, I don't expect you can read all of the details, but the key thing to look for, well, first, you might look for the name of the author. It doesn't appear on the title page. Why? Well, the author wasn't so important. The person who was very important, his name appears, if I can point it out. Here. It's the bookseller. And you get the address of the bookseller. I could go into a lot of detail, which I will spare you. But the key thing is the very last line, which says, avec approbation et privilège du roi. So this is a book that appears with a privilege. But what is a privilege, and what does that actually mean? Well, approbations were given by censors who read the manuscript and then approved it, writing a formal statement, so that it could receive a privilege. Now, the word privilege is, for me, the key word for understanding France in the 17th and 18th centuries. Everyone had a privilege of some kind, even peasants who might pay less salt tax in their village compared with peasants in another village. The word privilege is based on the Latin root meaning private law. So law was private. It applied to some people and not to others. The idea of equality before the law is a foreign idea. It will be enacted with the French Revolution. But before 1789, people assumed that everyone was unequal, and that was the way society should be. That's how God made mankind. So books have privileges, and people have privileges. Privileges are everywhere. What we need to do, then, is to ask ourselves what actually is the privilege of a book. Well, every legal book had to have the privilege actually printed in it, and the approbations as well. So if you pick up a legal book from the 18th century in France, you can read the actual statements of the censors when they made approbations. And these statements are very interesting in themselves. So, of course, I don't expect you can read them, but look at how much print there is and how much the censors are discoursing about this book. What they say is, I'll give you a few quotations. Quote, "I had pleasure in reading it. It is full of fascinating things." That's the censor in one of these approbations. Or again, another censor. There are 4 censors here. He stressed the book's usefulness for travelers and students of botany, and he especially praised its style. A third censor, writing an approbation, simply attested that the book was a good read. He could not put it down, he said, because it inspired in the reader, I'm quoting, that sweet but avid curiosity that makes us want to continue further, end quote. Is this the language you would expect from a censor? I think we need to go back to Irving Goffman's question, what is going on here? With your permission, Marina, I could take off my necktie, but that might shock me. Well, these are the official statements printed in the books. To find out how the censors did their job, you need to go to the manuscript collections, where there are hundreds of memos and letters, documents in which the censors discuss the way they did their work. And if you study enough of them, you can reconstruct the discourse on censorship by censors. Many of these in-house memos that only the censors saw were quite favorable. And they really read like book reviews. They praise the style and the substance of the manuscript that the censors approved. The unfavorable memos that circulate among the censors rarely mention any offense against the state, the church, or morality. Why? Well, because books that were offensive would never have been submitted to the censors in the first place. They would have been sent to Geneva or to Amsterdam, or even to Avignon, which was the territory belonging to the Pope in the 18th century. The Pope paid no attention to Avignon, where they printed some anti-clerical tracts that were quite good reading for the French. So you don't find what you expect in reading the in-house correspondence of the censors. Instead, you find that there are many remarks about style as well as substance. One memo by a censor concluded, this is a negative one, it is a compilation without taste and without discernment.